Hi, friend. It's been a while. It's been a while. How are you doing? Where is your energy directed? Is it like clear? Or maybe it's scattered? You can take a deep breath. Let's arrive here together. I've been feeling a bit, I wanted to say low, but I'm not sure if that is the right word. I've been in agony and rage and love and shame. Really sitting with and being with all that the genocide in Palestine is bringing up. My eyes, like my physical eyes, have been hurting a lot, so I'm taking care of them and continuing to turn to my altar. I went to, on October 7th, to a beautiful evening with my friend Libby to create an altar for Palestine. And it has been really supportive to have that altar. Today I have with me a rock. I'm going to bring it closer in case you're... So you can watch this on video on Spotify or on YouTube if you want to see the video, but you can also just listen. I have a rock that I brought home with me. I asked if I could bring it with me from Granada in Spain. It sits well in the hand, and it has both like smooth places that are like very smooth surface, and then some places that are a bit more, has a bit more texture to them. I'm holding on to this rock today. I kind of feel I need it. So, regaining focus is kind of the theme of this episode. And I want to give you a little bit of context about why I am doing this episode now. And I'm going to start with something from my morning sadhana, my morning practice. So I am participating in the Remembership. So the Remembership is created by Colette Davis, her Samavesha School of Yoga. And for 3 months now, starting now in October, we're going to work with the goddess Tara. And it is a kind of version or aspect of Tara that I haven't met before. She's very Kali-like, with her kind of twilight blue body. And one of the symbols that she carries in one of her hands is a pair of scissors. So I sat in sadhana this morning and practiced with Tara. And towards the end of the practice, I had this, it was kind of both a felt sense experience and a visual image of her with her big scissors. She started to cut up my body. Like she started with my fingers and my arms. And I know it might sound like very disgusting is the word that comes, but it wasn't. It was quite a nice feeling. And it was this, it felt like, you know, when you're pruning trees and bushes and things in during winter or early spring, to how do you say it, regenerate, new growth for new kind of new branches to be able to grow. It was kind of it was that feeling, and I just like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's do that. So that was one piece that inspired this episode. And then another piece is that it's been coming up a lot with in different spaces, like with students and clients and friends, that there is this kind of feeling of losing focus and energy, that things are very chaotic, and there is this sense of kind of wanting things to happen now, but it just creates more chaos and more kind of flailing around and feeling scattered all over the place. And as I'm sitting here, I have my window right in front of me, and I can see it's a beautiful sunny October day, and every now and then there's a leaf falling. So there's birch trees outside my window and a big maple tree. And occasionally the leaves are falling, and the leaves are falling, and the leaves are falling. And that kind of flailing around, I see it as if the birch tree would start to try to pick back up all the leaves. Oh my God, my leaves are falling, my leaves are falling, and just trying to gather them all and put them back on. But we are in the season of the leaves falling. And by embracing that is how you begin to regain focus again. And I think it's that kind of also the shift in identifying with from the leaves to the tree, to be able to become the tree. Yeah. So how do the leaves fall? There's some wind coming, and the wind that moves in is taking the leaves with her. I was outside for a moment, and there's like this big old birch tree, old lady birch, standing just between where our sort of garden ends and the forest begins. And I could see at the topmost branches, all the leaves have already fallen down. And it's just almost like they're falling from the top first, because that's where the wind is. It moves. And so when you begin to lose focus, when the wind comes, it's almost like you imagine it like you've written a manuscript, you've written a story, and you have the whole manuscript on your desk, and the wind comes and it just blows the manuscript away. And you've sorted all the pages, and now they're just like all over the room. And so you begin to try to gather all the pages, and which page goes where. And the more you move, the faster you move, your kind of movements begins to add to the wind, and it becomes more wind, and it gets windier and windier and windier. So that kind of trying to grasp things back together is just kind of adding to the chaos that is already there. Do you know that feeling? I'm pretty sure you've had that experience, and maybe you are sitting with that experience right now. And trying, if I do this thing, and if I do that thing, and if I'm just So how do you regain focus? It is that by coming back to the sensing, hearing the soul voice. And of course, we could also say the soil voice. So soul and soil are so The world soul, the anima mundi, is in the soil. So soul is that very earthy, deep, underground, feminine, that when we are descending into winter, if you follow that descent down, that soul voice becomes clearer. It's easier to hear during winter if you get silent enough to listen. And so, but I mean, yeah, how do you do that? If from this chaotic, windy, flailing, I want things to happen now. Yeah. How do you then follow the pull down underground into soul? So one part is to have a container for all the things that are moving around. It's almost like there's feathers flying in the air, and you need a container to put all those feathers in. And that container could be a journal, it could be drawing, it could be dancing. But I do kind of feel that it needs to be something that is that you take and you create something of it. And it's so crucial to have that container, like to have a cauldron, like the witch, to put things in. You need to put them somewhere, not to make sense of them, not to make something like necessarily in the moment new of it, but it's just to gather all the flying things, and you take them one by one and you put them in the container. And that container is, of course, if I go back to the trees and the leaves, that container is the soil. So the tree is putting its leaves back into the container of the soil of the soul. And this is so important because, especially if you're living in the northern hemisphere, we're in autumn, in the matriarchal season. The soil is depleted. It can't produce anything more. It is depleted. It is the season of producing is done. So what happens in autumn is that the plants, all of their energy is going down, and they are developing stronger roots. And it's happening if you're in the northern hemisphere, it's happening in this moment, and you can kind of just slip into that energy and follow it and use that wisdom to begin to regain focus. And it's going to take time. And that's the cycle of life. So since the soil is depleted, something has to be offered into it. That is the leaves. All the plants that are kind of just sinking down, they're being offered to soul. They are offerings to the soul. And in the same way, what you put into your container is offerings to soul. It becomes nourishment for soul. And this is also like, because sometimes we think that, when I'm in this, regaining focus, all I need to do is rest. But I don't believe that is true. Yes, you need that too. But before that, you have to offer things to soul. So the matriarch, the archetype of the matriarch, she's not just sitting around doing nothing. No, she's slowly, she's doing what needs to be done, nothing more, nothing less. Slowly, she's doing what needs to be done, nothing more, nothing less. So, I'm going to tell you a story that can kind of shine some light on this descent into the dark. And you might in this moment want to close your eyes and lean back and listen to this story and kind of allow yourself to drink in the story. Drink in the story into the depths of psyche and kind of notice if there are sensations or images or something that kind of that this story stirs up inside of you that you can then offer into the container as nourishment for soul. And the story is called Three Golden Hair. Three Golden Hair. You're in a forest. And towards the west, you can see the last drops of twilight sink down below the horizon. The night sky is dark and sprinkled with stars. It is new moon. And it's cold. The first frost has appeared on the forest floor. But it's still soft underneath. So there is the hard surface on the top layer, and then there is still that softness underneath. And in the forest there is an old man, a tired old man. And he is pulling himself forward through the forest. So he's pulling on the branches of the trees to move forward and deeper into the forest. And in one hand he's holding a lantern, and there is a candle burning inside. But it's almost finished, that candle. It's just like the last little bit left. And his body is tired and worn out. The skin is hanging on his bones. And his hair is dry and white and brittle. And there are patches on his head where the hair has fallen off. He has long fingernails and yellow teeth. And the eyelids are heavy over his watery, tired eyes. But he continues to pull himself forward. He's pulling one step at a time. And there are holes in the soles of his shoes where the cold from the frosty ground slips in, and it kind of travels all the way into his bones. And at a distance, he can see a warm light, a tiny warm light, and he's moving in the direction of that light, one tired step at a time. And as he's coming closer, he can see that it's a cottage. It's a small cottage deep in the forest, and the light comes from the fire in the hearth inside the cottage. And he's determined to make his way all the way to the door. And in the moment that he reaches the door, the light in his lantern goes out, and he falls on the ground like a heap of bones. Slowly the door opens, making a creaking sound, and there stands a steady, wise woman. She sees the man on the ground and she lifts him up in her arms and she pulls him close, close to her chest. She takes her time to close the door and she begins to walk over the wooden floor towards the fire. And next to the fire, there's a rocking chair. And she sits down in the rocking chair, holding the old man in her arms. And there, in the dark of the night, she begins to rock him. And she's rocking back and forth, back and forth. There, 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 there. Every now and then, she takes a stick and kind of pokes around in the fire, and she's adding a fire log. And above the fire, there hangs a cauldron. And you can begin to notice that something is cooking inside that cauldron. And she continues to rock the old man, there, 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 there. And as the warmth of the fire reaches the old man's skin, the skin begins to regain its shape. And she continues to rock him. She continues to rock him. His skin begins to regain a little bit of color. And she adds some more firewood to the fire. And in the cauldron, something begins to boil. And a smell of a delicious stew fills the room. And as the smell, the scent of that warm food reaches the old man's nostrils, the flesh inside the skin begins to plump. And she continues to rock him there, 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 back and forth, back and forth. And it starts to get warmer and warmer inside the cottage. And there's a tiny little drop of sweat forming at the old man's head. And as the sweat begins to seep out, his hair begins to grow out. That old hair turns thick and brown, and she continues to rock him there, 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 there. And there's a window facing east. And as the old woman can see the first sort of drops of twilight of that morning sun beginning to rise in the east, she turns to the old man, who is now a young boy, and she plucks from his hair, his head, 3 hairs, and she drops them onto the floor. Ding, ding, ding. And just when she drops that last hair, the warmth inside the cottage becomes almost unbearable, and it's filled with the scent of that cooking stew. And the little boy now opens his eyes and he jumps out of the woman's arms and he rushes to the door and he opens the door, and fresh air gushes in through the door, and he runs out and he jumps up and he becomes the morning sun. So the old man in this story is, of course, that driving force inside of you. The driving force, the ambition inside of you. That is tired. When you're losing focus, when you're losing energy, the driving force inside of you is tired. And when you begin to flail around, trying to pick up the papers of the manuscript or trying to pick up the dead leaves that are falling, the distance between the old man and the cottage grows larger. So the distance becomes longer. So to let the leaves fall, to let the pages of the manuscript fall, and to let that old man walk through the forest all the way to the cottage and the old woman. To return to the feminine, to return to the dark, underground place of soil, of soul. And to notice that in this story, that wise woman, she's not rushing. She's not rushing. She's taking her time. She's slow. But she's also not doing anything. She's doing what needs to be done. She's doing what needs to be done, one thing at a time, as she's rocking and holding the old man in her arms. So to regain your focus, when you've lost focus, it's really about surrendering to the cycles of life, to the cyclical nature, and to know that the cycle of life applies to everyone and everything. Nothing gets away from it. So to light that fire, to light the candles, to have the containers. So you can see that in the story there's several different containers. The cottage is a container. And the old woman, she offers the 3 hairs onto the floor of the cottage. But there is also the hurt, where the fire lives, that is also a container. And the woman, she puts firewood into the container. And there is the cauldron above the fire, where she's added things that are now cooking. And all of this is kind of creating that heat and the holding that needs to happen to regain focus. So you light the candles and you have your container, if that is a journal or your drawing, and you begin to offer into that. You offer into that all the things that are flying around, and you take them and you offer them into the fire, into the cauldron, into the cottage, into the container. You offer them to soul, just like the trees are offering their leaves to the soil. And in that way, you are doing what needs to be done, nothing more, nothing less. And in that process, you regain your focus by beginning to again hear the soul voice. You begin to hear in the dark, because that is where soul is. Soul is feminine. Soul is underneath, underground, deep in the soil. And I mean, we are in that season, so it is about connecting. If you're in the Northern Hemisphere, we're in that season, so you can connect to the energy that is already happening, and you follow that. Which of course I know goes against our whole culture, but fuck this shit culture. It's not working. What we've been doing is not working. We need to do it differently. And if you're here listening, I know that you are part of a movement that are we're moving in a different direction. And of course it's not easy. No, it's not. Change never is. It's just oftentimes we're being sold these ideas of like big changes happen overnight. No, they don't. They take time. And in that kind of the tedious work of it, you become stronger, more robust, and more resilient. Become the wise woman in the process. You become the one who knows. what else do I want to say? So it's really about like returning to the feminine and the cyclical and the spiral of life, and as you're going through it, to begin to trust that, to begin to trust the wisdom of the cycle. So when you're losing focus and losing energy, it is time to descend. It is a time of waiting, of pruning, of cutting things away, pulling out those 3 hairs. It is a time of sacrifice, of offering into the container, offering to the fire, offering to the cauldron, which could be your journal or drawing. And when the time comes, there is going to be so much heat. There's going to be so much heat. And that driving force and ambition will wake up, and it just can't wait. It's going to just like rush out through the door. And then you follow that energy. Was there anything else I wanted to say? No, I don't think so. So, when you're losing focus, you're losing energy, it is a sign that it is time to descend. It is time to descend. It is time for that cycle, that part of the cycle, to go into the dark, to the womb, into the soil, into that fertile ground from which new life can grow. Okay, my love. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. Much love.